With the 2020 presidential election campaign now in full swing, the Democrats have launched what's called an impeachment inquiry into President Trump, a risky move in the run-up to a presidential election and one fraught with peril in the most bitterly divided government in generations, especially if it leads to an actual impeachment vote in the House of Representatives and a trial in the United States Senate. I'm Tim Donner with 5 facts about the impeachment process designed to place the issue in perspective amid the hysteria being whipped up on both sides of the aisle. Fact 1. Impeachment is a purely political process, not a legal one. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the section pertaining to the presidency, states that the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. But those crimes are determined by the House of Representatives, so they can be anything the elected officials in the House decide are high crimes or misdemeanors, whether or not they would be considered such in a court of law. Fact 2. Impeachment does not mean removal from office. Impeachment means only that a legislature, in this case the House of Representatives, brings charges against a constitutional officer. It's analogous to the bringing of an indictment by a grand jury. But once impeached, the process moves to a full trial in the Senate where a 2/3 majority, or 67 out of 100 votes, is required for conviction and removal. Essentially, the House of Representatives indicts and the Senate convicts. This makes the current situation that much more explosive, with most of the Democratic majority in the House apparently favoring impeachment of President Trump and a Republican majority in the Senate likely to acquit. Fact 3. Impeachment of a president has only happened 3 times in the history of the U.S. The successor to Abraham Lincoln and 17th President Andrew Johnson was the subject of 11 articles of impeachment in 1868, primarily for removing a cabinet officer against the wishes of the House, and he escaped conviction on one of those counts in the Senate by a single vote. More than 100 years later, in 1974, a committee of the House approved 3 articles of impeachment against President Richard Nixon at the height of the Watergate scandal. But Nixon resigned before impeachment was completed. And in 1998, the House impeached President Bill Clinton for lying under oath, but the Senate failed to convict. Fact 4. The current impeachment process is just the second one to take place during a presidential election campaign. If the current inquiry and investigations produce the drafting and approval of actual articles of impeachment, it would be the first time in 151 years that it would happen while a president is seeking a second term. Andrew Johnson was impeached during the election year of 1868 and failed to win the nomination of the Democratic Party for another term. Nixon and Clinton were both impeached 6 years into their presidencies after they had already been reelected to a second and final term in office. And that brings us to fact 5. Impeachment and conviction of a president amounts to a reversal of the last election. The reason impeachment has so rarely been employed in the annals of American history is that, brought to completion, it overthrows the will of the voters and creates a true constitutional crisis of epic proportions. So it has always been undertaken with caution, as it is in the case of President Trump. An impeachment inquiry, as defined by whatever House leader is in power at the time, is one thing, but putting members of Congress on the record over whether to actually remove a sitting president, especially one who, like Nixon and Clinton, was elected to office, is quite another. We hope you enjoyed this and learned a thing or two. If so, please subscribe to the Liberty Nation channel right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. I'm Tim Donner. Thanks for watching.